Hello. This week we're celebrating National Apprenticeship Week, and what better way to celebrate it than to listen to a former apprentice talk to another former apprentice? However, there is a little bit of a twist to this discussion, and I'm very proud to say that introducing this conversation will be our very own Lauren, who started her own apprenticeship journey with us 6 years ago now and has gone on to have a fantastic career with us here in City and Guilds. But Lauren's going to be talking to another former apprentice, none other than a Skills and Apprenticeship Minister, Gillian Keegan, who started her own apprenticeship journey, I think a few more years than 6 years ago. But I know it's a journey she's been incredibly proud of and often talks how it set her off on her career path, as you'll hear from her in her own words shortly. So I think that's all that's left for me to say, really. Just sit back, enjoy the conversation, and I hope it's yet another reminder of the positive impact of why apprenticeships are so great, but also why they matter to our economy and to building our futures. Thank you.
Hello everyone and welcome. I'm Lauren Roberts and I'm the Youth Engagement Executive at the City and Guilds Group. Today I'm delighted to be joined by the Apprenticeships and Skills Minister, Gillian Keegan. Thank you so much, Minister, for taking time to speak to me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Lauren. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. So I actually started my journey at the City and Guilds Group 6 years ago now as an apprentice myself. And I completed apprenticeship. Since then, I've gone on from being an apprentice to a coordinator, and now I'm very happy to be the executive for youth engagement, which really just adds to me why I'm so excited to speak to you today, because I know that not only are you the Skills and Apprenticeship Minister, but you're also a former apprentice too. I really just wanted to touch on that to begin with and really just ask you, what did you actually enjoy about doing your apprenticeship? And what kind of learnings did you take from it that still kind of help you to this day?
Well, I started my apprenticeship at 16. So I grew up in a place called Knowsley in Liverpool and went to a comprehensive school, which let's just say had mixed results. And I did all right, actually, in my GCSEs, but there weren't that many options available at the time. So I was really lucky to get this apprenticeship in a car factory in Liverpool. And what I loved about it, well, first of all, I loved going into the workplace. That was amazing because there's nothing, you can't recreate that in a classroom. You know, when you're in a car factory, you know, the actual atmosphere, there was 2,500 people worked there, all the variety of jobs you see that people are doing. But also I loved the variety of the apprenticeship itself. So my apprenticeship was what would be called a rotational degree level apprenticeship. It wasn't called anything like that fancy name then. But what they did is they allowed you to go around all the different bits of the car factory for 3 months, for 3 years. So 3 months here, 3 months there. And by the end of it, you really had a very good sense of how the whole business worked. So I think that's what I really loved about it, the ability to learn new things, and also how keen everybody was to support me and the other apprentices as well. And I don't know if you found this, but everybody you come into contact with, they want to pass on their knowledge and information. They've got all those years of wisdom and they really want to pass that on to you. So I loved that as well. I love that learning, you know, in a real environment. Plus, you go 1 day a week to college, and then in my case, I went 1 day a week to university to do a degree.
Definitely, I definitely agree. I think for me, so I did mine in business administration. And for me, exactly as you said, I knew I wanted to work in some kind of fancy office, but I didn't know what I wanted to do there. So being given the chance to experience different areas of business while being paid for it, while learning, and while also getting a qualification for my CV seemed like such a no-brainer for me. I guess you kind of touched on it already with that, Minister, but what makes you so passionate about them? I guess giving you the stepping stone for your career is probably the biggest thing, but is there anything else that you would say makes you so passionate about them and their value?
Yeah, I think an apprenticeship's like a way of life, a way of lifelong learning. And, you know, I've used it several times actually, because if you think about it, it's that mixture of doing something and then actually learning some structure, some other sort of you know, academic or other things as well. So it's that sort of that transfer of knowledge between the actual theory and the practice, which I just think is a perfect route. And since then, you know, I did my apprenticeship about 35 years ago, so it's a long time ago now, but it's still exactly the same today. You know, if you're in a fast moving environment or things are changing around you, and, you know, in an office, right, in any business, the technology is moving quite quickly, and a really good way to make sure that whatever you're studying, whatever your formal qualifications are in, whatever you're actually studying in the classroom, is always up to date, because it's always going to be up to date, because businesses will always be really up to date. So I love that way of learning as well, and I just think I almost think it's a superior way of working, because things move so quickly that you're never putting your time in something that's already out of date, because you're moving with it.
So true, so true. I love the bit around having stuff that is always, or has kind of always been virtual, I guess, for apprenticeships. There's always somewhere you can log on and access that information. I guess in kind of difficult times at the moment, quite a few apprentices are having to work quite differently and study and work in a different way. Have you got any advice that you would say you'd give to those apprentices that over the last few months perhaps have had to adjust how they're studying and working?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, this generation, this cohort, whether young people who are studying or apprentices, they've really had to deal with so much. It's really astonishing what they've had to deal with. And I guess the advice is, you have to adapt. You have to be, you have to sort of be innovative about how you get over some of these things. And I've seen the most amazing innovation, actually, people using, online tools to demonstrate, what they're doing, and thinking of a different way of showing they can actually achieve something. Whatever it is, when you get to the end of this, you will be able to show resilience, you'll be able to show adaptability, you'll be able to show that, where there's a will, there's a way, you'll get around it somehow. And I think probably, I've spoken to a number of apprentices now, and quite a lot of them are also doing extra study as well. So to compensate for some of the things that they're not being able to do, they're learning new things which will serve them well in the future. And actually, there's something that we put in place called the Skill Toolkit, which is basically a load of free online courses. And I've spoken to a number of apprentices now. We've actually been using that just to learn a few other bits and bobs, which are useful, particularly if you're furloughed as well. That sometimes that's even harder, right? You've got more time and you want to get on with it, but you have to be a bit more adaptable. But hopefully we're coming to the end of this period. I really do hope that we can get all apprentices back learning and progressing as soon as we possibly can.
Me too, and I've also seen some really great resources, and I guess I hope that going forward they can still kind of be integrated, because so many of those things, I think, even if you are still able to go into work every day or able to go into college, there's so many kind of little bits of mobile information that you can get and still kind of continue to use. I guess on the flip side of that, have you got any advice for employers perhaps that are also themselves going through quite challenging times, and really just to make sure that the value of apprenticeships still seen as a really good tool for recruitment?
Definitely. And, obviously we put incentives into place as a government to make that decision easier for employers. So they get £2,000 for a younger apprentice and £1,500 for every older apprentice they take on. So we've done that to try and make the decision easier, because we realise with so much uncertainty and business uncertainty, making these decisions about recruitment can be hard. What we've seen so far is many companies, they appreciate this so much. They appreciate building their skills pipeline, building the next generation, giving young people opportunity, but also bringing people into their workplace who've got fresh ideas, who are digital natives, are very quick to learn about lots of things to do with technology, etc. So what we've seen so far is it does seem that people are highly valuing their apprentices, and they're keeping them on. So even though there have been some who've been made redundant, there haven't been as many people who are apprentices made redundant as normal sort of figures in the population. And also we're finding that apprentices are very quickly getting rehired as well. And we've got an apprenticeship redundancy service. So if anyone is in that position, there's a lot of vacancies on there, because there's a lot of people wanting to hire people who, were partway through their apprenticeship as well. So I think there's generally, people value apprentices so much that, hopefully, these will only be sort of small things to overcome, and people will be able to continue or get a new apprenticeship opportunity. But there's no doubt it's disruptive. There's no doubt it's hard for businesses. But by and large, I think employers have really, they really value apprentices. So they seem to have stuck with them and be working to help give them that opportunity.
Definitely. Just on the value of apprenticeship, something that I've seen quite recently, kind of the last few years, is just the increase in recognition that apprenticeships are getting. So moving away from kind of that stigma of them being the kind of less traditional route, and being the route that perhaps if you weren't able to get into kind of higher education, you'd do an apprenticeship. I've definitely seen kind of with the rise of degree apprenticeships, they're becoming more of just another route that is also just as great as any other route. Is that something that you've seen, that people are seeing the value in them far more?
100%. And actually, I saw it 35 years ago. So I did what started off as an apprenticeship. It wasn't called a degree apprenticeship, but they'd let you go as far as you went. And I went all the way. I just carried on doing the BTEC and then the HNC and then the degree. I just carried on. And they just let you go as far as you could. But at the same time, when I was working, doing my apprenticeship, there were also graduates that they recruited into the business. And what I found at the time was, obviously I was about a year behind in the degree for my age, because it was taking a bit longer. I was doing 1 day a week, etc. But I was 7 years ahead of work experience, because I'd started at 16. And that 1 year behind the academic, which of course you just catch up, and it's the same as if you took a gap year, I suppose now. But them catching up on that work experience took them an awful lot longer. And the great thing about the apprenticeship was that variety that you did. And not every graduate program had the same level of variety in. So even at the time, I found it was a better route in me, because I went much further. I went to more senior positions. And, throughout my career, I've only been an MP for 3 years. So most of my career I've spent in the business world and in the world of international business. And, I always felt I was a bit ahead, and I always kept that lead. So, I did. In the end, I used to say, and I say this to people, in my business career, I've had people from Oxford, from Cambridge, from Harvard, from INSEAD, from the best schools in the best unis in the world, and they all worked for me with my apprenticeship in the car factory and 1 day a week at Liverpool John Moores. And that ability to be getting ahead, being in the workplace, learning things that are happening quite quickly and quite fast moving, you just can't replicate it, I don't think, easily in a classroom. So in a way, I think there's such a strong route that I think more and more people may think, actually, a degree apprenticeship will be a really good. And the other thing that's an advantage, not only do you not have any debt, which I think is pretty compelling, but not only do you not have any debt, but you're also, whatever you study and whatever you do will always be valuable. You won't get to the end of your degree and realise that potentially you've studied something that doesn't have that much value in the workplace. And there are some people who are in that situation, and I can't think of anything worse, spending all that time, spending all that money, and then struggling to get into a decent job. And I come across a fair few apprentices now, actually, doing level 4 and level 5, who've already done a degree, but they want to use the apprenticeship route to get to do something, whether it's data analytics or digital marketing or HR, they want, or accountancy. They want to use the apprenticeship route to get something that's valuable to businesses. And that's I think the power of the apprenticeship route. You're never going to be studying something that's not valuable.
Definitely agree. And I think even if, for myself, when I finished so I did a level 2 apprenticeship, then a level 3, but I found even after my level 2, there were certainly elements of business that I found that I didn't enjoy, but there were so many that I did enjoy. And I thought, if I'd gone and I'd got a degree in a certain subject because there was slight interest in it, what position would I be in now? One of the big things that we find speaking to young people at the group, which we enjoy doing, and connecting former apprentices back to young people, or back to anyone with an interest in apprenticeships. What would you say as a former apprentice to perhaps someone who was thinking about themselves taking part in an apprenticeship, or was interested in that route? Have you got any tips for someone on that end of the
Well, first of all, definitely look at it. Definitely look at the higher levels, or a company that will work with you to go up the levels. And, and yourself, in a few years' time, you might decide, what, I'm going to do a level 4 or 5 or a 6, or I'm going to specialise in this area. It may be, or maybe in 10 years' time, when your business career is taking a certain route, you think, it'd be quite good to focus on studying this way. It's so flexible that, go with a high quality one, with a good company. Speak to lots of apprentices who've actually been through the programme in that company. I think the quality of apprenticeships now is really brilliant, but you may still find the odd one that's not. So speak to other people, you know, find out what people think of both the training provider and the business. There's lots and lots of ways you can do that now, because obviously there's a big community of apprentices. And try to get one that's as flexible as possible. As you said, when you're in school, I mean, there are some people in school who have this burning desire to be something. They know exactly what they want to be. But I don't know whether you found this, but most people don't. Most people are quite open. They kind of know, you know, roughly if it's an office or a field they want to work in, or, you know, outdoors, indoors, this kind of thing. But by and large, there's so many more careers than any career advisor or teacher could ever tell you about, because there's just so many different roles. And I think going somewhere where you can see all of those roles and get a feel for them is also important, because there's so many routes that you can have in life. We're all going to work for a long time as well. I mean, this going to be an MP is like my second career, and you will have 2 and 3 different careers, and you'll go back and you'll always, I think, say the foundation, which was my apprenticeship, was the most solid foundation and really was the springboard for my career, wherever you end up. So I think, yeah, ask a lot of questions, choose a good one, choose one where you get to see lots of different things, and then one that will allow you to progress and continue to progress when you want to, you know, take the next step. I think that's the advice I'd give.
Definitely agree. I almost myself kind of fell into an apprenticeship. It was a case of this wasn't for me, so I'll try this. And I ended up, you know, kind of loving it. But something that I'm seeing now, speaking to slightly younger apprentices, is that they actually heard about them in school when they had someone come in and talk to them. They had an employer do a presentation. So it's so great to see that kind of just in the 6 years since I started, employers are doing so much more to get out and actually speak to students about them, rather than just being this word that you Google and apply for a random vacancy and get a call for an interview. What would you say would be your hopes for the future minister, just around apprenticeships? Obviously coming out of difficult times and the whole value of them being increased. Do you have any hopes for the future of apprenticeships?
I think you just touched on it then, Lauren, that everybody knows about them. So we've got 600 apprenticeship standards, and the one I signed off a couple of weeks ago was a space engineering technician. I mean, you know, there is no job pretty much that you can't do via an apprenticeship route now. They go all the way up to level 7, which is a master's degree. So, you know, you can even get your master's degree for free via an apprenticeship, you know, in some professions. So I think open your eyes to what they are. And what I hope for the future is that everybody knows about them. Since I did one 35 years ago, I've just thought they were the world's best kept secret. Why did everybody not know that you could go and do an apprenticeship where they would train you and you would do your qualifications up to whatever level you wanted to go to? Why did everyone not know that? And I think that's still the case. They're still, in some cases, the world's best secret. And sometimes when you meet people who've done a degree and then go on to do an apprenticeship to get into the workplace, they say, nobody told me. Nobody told me. So right back to where you started with this question, we are working a lot now with schools and making sure that technical education and vocational education and different routes into the workplace are understood. And I see an apprenticeship in many cases as just a different route to the same career. And it is different. You don't get away. You don't go away to university. You know, you miss out on that experience in most cases, but you're working, you're earning, you're getting ahead in business. You probably move out from your parents quicker because you've done it, you know, you've done more work that way instead of, you know, having to figure out when you come back from university how you're going to start that journey. So I think it's a different route. It's not for everybody, but I just hope that everybody knows about it and knows the possibilities. And then I think the other thing I hope is that every apprentice always gets the chance to progress at any age, at any stage. Because I think you know, not everybody wants to study all the time. Sometimes you need a break from that, but being able to pick that up again when you're looking to get that next boost to your career or learn something else, that is freely available to everybody. That's the other dream I have.
Definitely. I think as well, as we're seeing kind of more employers, especially larger employers, taking apprentices, you almost are starting to get that social feel of it. As an apprentice for sitting Skills group, there were quite a few of us, and it kind of did feel as if, although I was at work and I had that professional feel, I did have that group of people of my similar age group to go on lunches with and to kind of have that social aspect. Lastly, really from me, Minister, would really just be, you spoke around, some of the great resources that you've kind of recently come across and the different standards that are being signed off. I just wanted to ask if there's kind of one thing that you're most proud of at the moment to do with apprenticeships that you can share.
The apprentices. There is nothing more uplifting than when you meet a group of apprentices. So, recently I met a group of apprentices at the beginning of the pandemic. They were doing their different apprenticeships in nursing, in healthcare. And, they had to do their endpoint assessments really quickly and get on the front line to help with this pandemic. I mean, you see people do that at a very young age. And you speak to them, and I don't think I've been on a round table or met a group of apprentices that I haven't been inspired by. They just, they look and sound like years ahead of where they are. Just, they're so mature. They're just, they can do in their approach. They've solved problems. They're really the apprentices themselves. I'm most proud of. I never tire of meeting apprentices of all ages. Actually, sometimes you meet some people who've, maybe left school with not many GCSEs years ago, 20 years ago, and they've done really sort of not great jobs, kind of insecure jobs, not fabulous jobs. And then they've found apprenticeships in their 30s and their 40s. And suddenly they're on their way to, I've met people who are doing pediatric nursing, who are being paramedics, who are on their way to training in so many different professions. A lot of engineering as well, a lot of data and digital, and they're doing that later on in life. Cybersecurity didn't exist when they were leaving school, something completely different. So I think the apprentices, the journeys of the apprentices, they're almost infinite in possibilities, and that's, I think, the thing I'm most proud of.
Amazing. I think exactly as you said, I think we definitely find that often apprentices are the best ambassadors for your business, because they can be some of the most loyal people that you ever hire, because they see and they feel that you've taken the time to invest in their development, and often you're counting on their passion, the work they're going to put in, rather than kind of qualifications and experience they may have, but it all too often pays off. So thank you so much for your time today, Minister, and for speaking to me. That was everything that I wanted to run through. Thank you again, and all the best.
Thank you, Lauren, and that was a lovely way to end. I completely agree with you. Thanks so much. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.